All right, today we're going to talk about values in dating, and we're going to talk about boundaries in dating. First, we're going to talk about values while dating. Now, values are simply what is important to you when it comes to a dating relationship. Take, for instance, values, let me say it again, is what is important to you when it comes to a dating relationship. Now, there's two types of values. There's actual values, and then there's aspirational values. Now, actual values are this. They're what is actually important to you when it comes to dating. Now, if good looks are an actual value, that means that you won't date a person who you think is ugly. All right? If money is what's actually important to you, that means if somebody even looks broke, you probably wouldn't even give them the time of day. Now, those are actual values. The second type of values are called aspirational values. Now, aspirational values are qualities that sound good, all right, but it really, when it comes down to it, it's really not how you choose your dates. Now, take, for instance, some people have an aspirational value of dating a committed Christian who loves God, who's in their Bible, who prays. That's your aspirational value. And they say, you know, that's what I want. But when it really comes down to it, you can find somebody who you really like that isn't a committed Christian, doesn't read their word, isn't really doing what they're supposed to do for the Lord, and still date them because that's just an aspirational value. That's just a value that sounds good, all right? But when it comes down to it, it really doesn't mean anything to you. Why do you keep on talking about values, Pastor? Thank you so much for asking. This is the reason why. Because, all right, we just can't have God's values be values that just sound good to us. God's values has to become our values. God's values has to become actual values for us. Let me give you an example of what God actually values. In 1 Thessalonians 5:22, it says, abstain from all appearance of evil. Ephesians 5:3 says, but fornication, or it says, but sex without being married, let it not be once named among you. Now think to yourself a couple of seconds. I just want you to think. What do you believe God means when he says, abstain from all appearance of evil? What comes to your mind when the Bible says that? Abstain from all appearance of evil. The Bible says, let not fornication be once named among you. God desires his values to become our actual values. Now, some people may say this. They may say, well, I don't care what other people think about what me and my man are doing. You know, we're going to do what we do. You know, it's all about God knows what's on my heart. That's all that matters. Now, truthfully, the Bible is clear about God caring what other people think about us. Just think for a second. Would you want somebody going around talking about your child? Of course you wouldn't. Because the simple fact that your child is a reflection on you. And just like your child is a reflection on you, we're a reflection on God. Well, God want everybody coming around dogging us out, talking about how they're this and how they're that. No, he wouldn't. All right, because we're a reflection on him. That's why he says that not only abstain from evil, abstain from all the appearance of evil, abstain from all that sneaking around or being undercover or trying to go in the cut or trying to do this or do that. All right, abstain from all the appearance of evil, but fornication, let it not be once named among you. I still believe, all right, that is what God's will, all right, and this is the Bible, that people get married and still are virgins. And if you're still a virgin, that's what God desires you to be, you know, when you get married, all right? But it says, now, we understand, like I said before, that we are created in the image of God, and we're a reflection on our Father, and God's values shouldn't just sound good to us. God's values need to become our values. Now, here's another important value when it comes to dating. Watch this. This is very important. To be truly happy in a relationship, sometimes we have to learn how to be happy without one. That's the definition of wholeness. Wholeness is when we're spiritually, mentally, emotionally, sometimes even financially, we get ourselves together enough to serve God with or without someone. Now, there's some ladies who act like, and I met them, they act like they can't even do without a man for even a couple of days. A week without a man, that's outrageous to them. There's some guys who go from girl to girl to girl without even thinking about trying to better themselves. All right? We're talking about values in dating. All right? And God desires us to be whole. That means that before we get in a relationship, we can find out, we can be like Paul said, being content. No matter what state he's in, that you can be content without a relationship or you can be content in a relationship. God wants us to be totally whole. All right, now here's a side note. Some people choose dates, and I'm going to tell you 2 reasons that are a side note why some people choose dates. Some people choose dates as a response to their inner struggles. All right? Sometimes they have a struggle with a person or whatever and from their past, and then they take that struggle and they put it on the other people that they date. All right, putting up walls, putting up things in front of that person, blaming that person for things that they really didn't even do. They pick their dates, they choose their dates according to inner struggles rather than according to godly values. Or there's some people that may have had controlling parents, or their parents used to be abusive, so they winding up picking people who are an abusive, or they go to the whole opposite road and they wind up dating people who are totally passive and do whatever they say. But any way you look at it, it's the inner struggle, or it's the hurt choosing to date and not godly values. We're talking about values. Here's another thing. Some people date according to their dark side. Have you ever noticed, like, sometimes you will see a really nice, respectable person, all right, really sweet, really innocent, and they're dating like the biggest jerk, the biggest thug, the biggest tough guy. And sometimes I thought, like, why would they ever date that person? But some people date according to their dark side. Now, there's really, really nice, sweet people who have a dark side. And basically, they're so nice and sweet and got a reputation for being nice that they don't ever want to share or bring out their dark side towards other people, but that, all right, pay attention, y'all with me? All right, that gets translated to who they date. So they date somebody who personifies their dark side. So instead of dating a nice, sweet person like them, they wind up dating the biggest jerk, biggest thug, all right, because that person is really the dark side, all right, of the person who picked them as their date. That man went over some people's head, but if you understand it, it's true. Some people date because of inner struggles. Some people date according to their dark side. But we're talking about values in dating, and God wants us to date according to godly values. So y'all still with me? Yeah. All right, now, we talked about values in dating. Now I want to talk about boundaries in dating real quick, then we're out of here. Now, boundaries are the invisible fence that protects your soul. Just like a physical fence tells your neighbor that this is where your yard ends, and if you come past this fence, you're trespassing on my property. Personal boundaries will let you know when somebody is getting ready to trespass on your emotional and personal property. Now, boundaries have to do with what you will or will not tolerate while you're dating. Now, let's play a little game. This is called Can You Tolerate It? Or You Cannot Tolerate It. All right? So I'm going to give you a scenario. And you can say, well, I'll tolerate this from a date, or I'm not going to tolerate it. And you just yell it out when I give you this scenario, okay? Just yell it out. Yell out, I can tolerate it, or I can't tolerate it. Y'all ready? All right, here's my little game. Now, it's several of them. First one is, remember, say you can tolerate it or you can. Not following through with promises or commitments. That's your date. Can't tolerate it. Can anybody tolerate it? You can tolerate it? Okay, you got to know what you can or cannot tolerate. This person you are dating puts their hands on you in a bad way or calls you out of your name. Can't tolerate it. Okay. Can't tolerate it. The person you are dating asks you for money, but is slow to pay you back. All right. Well, if we divide it. He shall. All right. This person is critical of you. Can you tolerate it or can't you? Okay, can. This person has a controlling personality. Can you tolerate it or can't you? No. Or can. They act like they have it all together rather than admitting their weaknesses or imperfections. You can. You want somebody who's transparent. I got you. They get overly defensive when it comes to constructive criticism. They're ready to just come at you if you tell them anything about themselves. Can you tolerate it or can't you? In between. This person has an arrogant, cocky attitude. Alright. Always late to everything. Alright. They say that they're going to change but never do. Can't tolerate it. Alright. They avoid conflict even if conflict is necessary to work things out. Alright, can't tolerate it. Okay. They would rather lie to you than say something that they think is going to hurt your feelings. Alright, can't tolerate it. They are a person who wouldn't mind dating someone who is dating someone else. Alright. This person avoids closeness. Alright. Alright. They pressure you to do things you don't want to do. Alright, will not. Okay. Alright. They don't see anything wrong with flirting with other people, even if you all are dating. Alright, we're moving on. Alright, they're very sweet, but you don't know if what they're saying is true or if they're just running game on you. Come on now, this is real stuff. You talking about you can't tolerate everything, but alright, they're very sweet, but you don't know if what they're saying is true or if they're just running game on you. Alright, this person is judgmental of other people. Now they're always judging somebody else. Alright, they gossip frequently. Uh-oh, we can't tolerate that. This person is jealous. They are always kind of suspicious of what you're doing. Alright, let's keep it real now. Let's just not say something that we think sounds good. Alright, this person got a hot temper. This person has a hot temper. Alright, they get fired up. Alright, they always want to get their way. Alright, ladies, they always want to get their way. If it's you, you got to tolerate somebody doing it to you. Alright, they're afraid to share their true feelings or desires because they don't want to get hurt. Alright, they are constantly complaining about little things. Our last one is 90% of the time, you and your date spend money on what they want to do. Ninety 90% of the time, you and your date spend money on what they want to do. Y'all are so funny. Alright. All right, before you go into a dating relationship, you want to be able to clearly communicate your boundaries. This goes with marriage too. Here's where some people get into trouble. This is real important. Pay attention. First is unclear boundaries. All right? Now, there's some people whose boundaries change as their mood changes. All right? Sometimes if they're in a certain mood, they need you away from them. You know, stay away. You know, this is my boundaries right here. But when they warm up and their mood changes, all right, they'll allow you to get a little bit closer. One day they want you out of there because you made them angry. The next day, they want you with them all day. You know, regardless. What is your boundary? Your boundary can't change back and forth. Either your fence is here, or it's out there, or it's in here. One or the other. You got to have clearly define your boundary, all right, for yourself first. Some people got the absence of boundaries. In a dating relationship, there's some guys who say, I'm down for whatever. You know, we got, you know, this is, and, you know, it's even some spiritual guys who, you know, they become unspiritual for one night and then they're down to do everything. And it's like, well, let me just get it out of my system and let me just be down for whatever. All right? Or there's some ladies or girls who've been dating somebody for so long they feel like they're married to them and they're willing to do whatever with that person even though God doesn't recognize their relationship because they're not really married. Third, there's some people whose boundaries are too wide. All right, you have romantic feelings for a person, and I know some people when I was in college and some younger people, you know, they want to stay virgins. They don't want to have actual intercourse, but then they do all of these things to please their man to substitute, you know, for not having that sexual relationship. And basically, make a long story short, you know, you're going to please God or you're going to please a man. All right? So basically, make a long story short, there's other girls or men who open themselves up to messing around with somebody of the same sex just because they want to experiment, all right, or just because they want to see how it is. And basically, you got to have your boundaries and your values relate according to what God is saying to you and not according to what your friends or companions or anybody else wants you to do or peer pressure is telling you to do. All right, the next one. Some people give up their boundaries for fear of being lonely. There are some people who say they'd rather be in a bad relationship than have no relationship at all. And if you do any of the following, you might be giving up your boundaries for the fear of being lonely. 1, put up with disrespectful behavior. 2, giving into things that go against your values. 3, settling for less than you know you really desire or need in your life. 4, staying in a relationship that you know has passed this deadline. 5, going back into a relationship that should already be over. 6, getting into a relationship that you know isn't going anywhere. Or 7, smothering the person you're dating with excessive needs or control. If that is you, you might be giving up your boundaries just because you don't want to be lonely. Number 5, some people, well, this is the 5th. All of that was under 1 point. All right. Now here's the next point. I don't want you to get confused. Here's the 5th point. All right. Some people have trouble with their boundaries because they're hopeless romantics. Some people are vulnerable to people who know how to romance them, who know how to kick game, who know how to bring them roses, flowers. For guys, a girl who knows how to really come on to their ego and make their ego feel good and everything like that. Some people are fascinated with romantic people and they look at the romance but don't look at the underlying character of the person. And sometimes romantic feelings are very, very good, but they're meaningless if you're willing to choose romantic feelings over a person's character. Now, here's what happens when you're in a romantic relationship. Say somebody romances you and they're like the person of your dreams. Basically, make a long story short, what happens is you take that romance, but you don't really know everything about them. So a person who loves romantic people, they kind of fill in the gaps on what you hope is true about that person, when it may not really be so. So they wind up getting hurt, they wind up getting embarrassed, they wind up falling out of love or getting totally angry because they're putting their feelings, or they're making that person out to be more than they actually are, because they really don't know the character of that person. All right. I have 3. I have closing tips. This is closing. I'm about to close. All right, we're about to get out of here now. Here's just 3 tips on dating. All right, that's going to help you with boundaries. And then we're out of here. All right, young and old people, listen to this. The first tip is this: friendship is the past. All right, I mean, not the past, but the path. All right, friendship is the path. I know that that fooled you a little bit. Friendship is the path. All right. Now, the best thing to do, all right, instead of jumping into a relationship and trying to get things started, because I know some people, even older people, will say, "Oh, you know, I'm past all of this and that. Let's just jump right into it. You know, time is winding down. I'm not getting any younger. Let's surpass all of that." But if you're truly trying to have godly values, allow God to speed things up, and you take things slow. All right. Friendship is always the path. All right. Don't rush into getting, "Oh, that's my boyfriend," or "That's my girlfriend," or "We're in a strong relationship." Get to know that person. Get to know their character. Get to know their idiosyncrasies. Get to know that whether or not, you can really be in a strong relationship with them, all right, in the long term, all right, because you know more about them. And that doesn't mean, I gotta live with them, because I know some people back home. I remember my friend was like, I would never marry someone that I didn't live with first, but at the same time, it's really hard living with somebody who you're not married to, all right, and then expecting to be, do everything right, be holy, live right, because if a person you're living with starts walking around in some revealing stuff, all right, you're supposed to be abstinent, you're supposed to be living right. It's hard to do that. So I'm not trying to say get to know them, like live with them, see if you can live with them before you marry them. I'm talking about get to know them in a way where y'all are friends, y'all are building a relationship. You know that they really care about you and you care about them. That they prove something to you. That's a big thing. Not that they just talk good, but when you were going through something, they prove that they will be there for you. Sometimes you need somebody to wait until some crisis happens to see if they really got your back or not. All right, so that's one. Friendship is the path. Number 2, all right, get connected with safe people who are not in a dating relationship with you, who will give you honest feedback. You need godly people. You need wise people who's not so caught up in the relationship, because sometimes your emotions get so wrapped up in the relationship, your emotions get so wrapped up in the person, that what happens is you're not really able to tell, or you're not really able to know whether or not you should stay with them. Your emotions are too wrapped up. So you need somebody outside of that relationship who can look in and say, "Hey, you may think that person's good for you, but look at, they do this or they do that, or, look at them. I don't really think they're really doing you right," or whatever. And don't just brush them off like, "Oh, you hating on me. I hate this, and I get something good and now you want to dog out the person I'm with." No, talk to a person that's really going to tell you the truth, not just agree with you. Talk to a person who really can see the character of the person, a godly person, and allow them to give you true advice. All right, your mother, okay, your mother will be able to tell who's good and who's not good. All right, a close godly friend, your pastor, ask them, "What do you really think about this person?" And let them honestly tell you without you getting defensive. All right, the last thing is, when people cross your personal boundaries, there should be consequences for their actions. Now, there's some people, somebody crosses their personal boundary, All right, and they want to talk about it. Well, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. Why do you treat me like that? They talk. But when it comes down to it, there's no consequences. And talking without consequences is just nagging. All right, you're just nagging someone and not really having any consequences about what they're doing. Now, take for instance, here's a scenario. You and your date are talking about something important, and they totally dismiss your opinion. Every time you try to talk, they just cut you off. And this is real important to you. Here's how you have consequences for their actions. You will tell them how you feel. You'll say, I really didn't like how you kept on cutting me off. All right, when we were talking about something important. All right. You will say, I feel hurt and I feel distant. Then you will tell them how you want to be treated. You'll say this. You'll say, give me equal time and respect when we're discussing a serious issue. And then tell them what you will do if they don't change. You will say this. If this happens again, I'll probably distance myself from you for a while until you're able to understand my true feelings and see what I'm saying is serious. If they do it again, then follow through with those consequences. All right? Now, there's some people who just let their problem build up. They smile and they try to act like it's not there. They just let it build up. And then the only consequence they have is breaking up with the person. Well, that's not helping you become a better person, because of in the situation that sometimes conflict is the gateway to a breakthrough in a relationship. And sometimes you got to be able to deal with that conflict. And another thing, your only consequence can't be breaking up with a person, because how are you going to stay with a person when you finally get that person, how are you going to work things out when you finally meet that person who you're going to marry? You just can't let things build up. Here's my rule, me and my wife's rule. If there's something that happens to you that makes you feel some type of way, no matter how petty it seems, we go to each other and we say, hey, what you did made me feel some type of way. You know, I was really upset by that. You know, and we talk about it when it first happens. So it doesn't have to build up, and then the next time, and then they do something really, really little, and you blow up and you go crazy and you throwing things at them, and they're ducking and they're diving underneath tables and stuff like that. And they thinking, wow, this woman is absolutely crazy. Or this guy is crazy. He's a nut. But it's not because of that one little thing they did at that time. It's because all of the little things you allowed to build up over time that you never confronted, that you never discussed. We're talking about values in dating, having godly values, and we're talking about boundaries in dating. Knowing why you're dating, where your boundary is for yourself, and clearly communicating that to your date and sticking with that. All right? Remember, the word of the Lord said, abstain from all appearance of evil. And that's a godly value. We are done. It's 1:10. All right, I'm about to pray for you all. Everybody bow your heads and close your eyes.